Welcome back. Right on to our next presentation. We are very fortunate today to have Joellyn Fox with us, Dr. Joellyn Fox. Dr. Joellyn Fox is the lead therapist at Dan Aaron Parkinson's Rehab Center, which is part of the Penn Health system. I mentioned her earlier. She presented actually at our 2012 conference that the MSA Coalition held that we helped out with here in New Jersey. Joellyn's certified in the Silver Medal Big Program, the Parkinson's Wellness and Recovery Program, and Rocksteady Boxing Program. She's prominent as a speaker in local support groups as well as for the Cure PSP Foundation. Joellyn teaches at Widener University, Drexel University, and Rutgers University in their physical therapy department with lectures concerning Parkinson's disease and neurological disorders. She's worked for Penn Health for 10 years and is a graduate of Lehigh University and Temple University's physical therapy department. So you're going to get some very practical, wonderful information here. I will turn the floor over to Dr. Fox.
I am going to move around a lot, and hopefully that'll keep our energy going after the meal. But as Cindy said, I work at the Dan Aaron Parkinson's Rehab Center, which is located in Center City, Philadelphia. And for the last 8 years I've been there. For the last 8 years, I have only worked with people who have idiopathic Parkinson's, young onset Parkinson's, MSA, PSP, CBD. And I'll tell you, I'm just as enthusiastic now as I was 8 years ago, and that's because every person whom I work with is different, and we're trying different things, and there's so much research that has occurred in the last 8 years specifically in terms of what the role of exercise is in neuroprogressive illnesses, but likewise the role of therapies and Parkinson's and Parkinsonisms. So that being said, next slide, because there is so much information, I thought, how can I condense this? How can I make this the most practical? And in my head, I thought, you know what? I'm going to use a fellow who I've known for so long and worked with for so long. I'm going to talk about him, his symptoms, as they can generalize or we can broaden them to a greater population. Likewise, the interventions which I have used, the tips which I have given, and then we'll globally talk a little bit about exercise, and of course your questions will be answered. So next slide. So my fella, as I think a lot of you in this room can attest to, had a very interesting path to his diagnosis. When he was first referred to me for therapy, his script said, idiopathic Parkinson's disease, PT, eval, and treat. And honestly, every therapist looks at a diagnosis, but every good therapist looks and says, you know what, I'm looking at the person and the symptoms which they present with in order to make my goals and align my goals with the patient whom I'm working with. So this fella came to me at a very young age. Those diagnosed younger than 45 are considered the young onset Parkinson's disease, and he was younger than 45, and we worked together because he had a shuffling gait. His movements were slower, so okay, typical motor symptoms we do see in idiopathic Parkinson's disease, but he was a huge athlete, and he had some early onset arthritis, and he went for a total knee replacement. As I'm checking in on him, all of a sudden I hear, well, his length of stay at the hospital was extended because he started having severe orthostatic hypotension. Everybody know what that is? Low blood pressure when you first stand up. You know, sometimes we all feel it when we get up too quick, but we do know this as a cardinal sign in a type of MSA that has more autonomic dysfunction. So he had a severe orthostasis that truly was keeping him in the hospital, and the doctors were having difficulty managing. They were trying to add more salt to the diet, trying meds such as mitidrine to try to up the blood pressure, and nothing was working. Finally, he returns to his movement disorder specialist, and they start messing around with his medications and slowly taking him off of the carbidopa-levodopa, which he was taking. And what they found was that there was really no change. Aha, another red flag. And then came his diagnosis of MSA. So his predominant symptoms, as he now comes to me after this knee replacement and finishing that rehab, is the dizziness, absolutely, and his low blood pressure. But now on top of that shuffling gait he was once dealing with, he has something called antipulsion, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. He likewise has freezing of gait, we'll likewise talk about that, and a ton of falls. So that obviously is, whoa, we need to address this. He also comes to me and says, I love working out so much and I want to continue to work out. It makes me feel strong. especially right now when I feel like I have no control. Please help me work out. So we'll talk a little bit about how I was able to intervene with that. He returns currently, and I think this is important to know, from a frequency standpoint, I now see E just once a month. And we call that maintenance, where he comes in and it's basically brainstorming. I know them so well, they have such a good setup at home, we'll talk about what he's doing. But obviously this disease is changing and we just touch base, we give recommendations. Now I can change that frequency if he comes back and there are a lot more red flags and I become concerned and we need to come in, we need to do repeat practice on certain things, or we're going to be training with a new piece of equipment. But we're not there yet, he's maintained well. His current level of function is that his wife is around, works from home, so he has that supervision of his spouse intermittently in the home, which is of growing concern to me because as we're trying to change his assistive equipment, the falls still continue and the falls are happening when he's not being supervised. So we're going to talk about the ability to self-cue yourself on some of these mobility tips versus the need to have a coach, not a nag. Okay, we'll talk about the difference there. A coach cueing you on some of these strategies, or even what's coming next for E, and that's the role of an aide in the home and the acceptance of that or the understanding of that. He does use a rollator. He nicknames her Big Bertha because he is a tall fella, and it is a big rollator. He uses that in the home. We've started that now just to try to get him to slow down a little bit and be a bit more mindful. So next slide. That symptom that I was talking about, antipulsion, is a specific form of festination in that it's forward. We call festination being a runaway train. So for example, and I saw a couple people, I was just, spying around during lunch, as you're coming to a table, and I'll demo here so everybody can see, and I want your hat because it's a cool hat. So I'm coming to the hat and then all of a sudden, I lose my balance forward, this festinating steps, okay? Out of control, okay? A runaway train. Never negate the role of gravity. Unfortunately, we feel it all as we age. However, if you take your body weight and shift it forward, gravity has the control and your body can't be quick enough to reestablish that control. So we see it often when people are reaching too far forward. We see it often spontaneously if just your posture has changed so much, and it might just simply be the act of somebody calling your name and you look over, and then you can start to festinate. Or when you start to take that first step, because rather than your legs initiating, the trunk initiates, and again you festinate. We see it a lot when people are going to turn for the chair, because rather than what once was so automatic to just come to a chair and sit down, your brain is focused on going to the chair and sometimes you head straight onto it. Why is that? So many caregivers think, or friends think, why are you walking that way to the chair? But the brain sees the chair, I'm going to go to it, and then there's this sticky event or the kaplop right into the chair. This is a biggie, being told to hurry up. And I work with so many people, and the biggest thing that they start to develop is something called anticipatory anxiety. When they're going to the doctor's office or even out to a restaurant, I don't want to hold people up. I don't want to hold people up. So to initiate moving faster, what the body does is say, lean forward. And then all of a sudden we've got festination, and it ends up just taking longer. Okay, so that's another big thing. And then likewise, not being aware of the quality of your steps, all right? The focus has never been on your feet unless they hurt for some reason. The focus is always getting to the destination or doing the task which you're moving to a place to do. So let's talk about some tips for this. Next slide. It all comes down to the foundation elements, bringing the awareness to the feet, okay? I'm lucky enough to have a dance background, so an awareness of my body is high. For most people, and as I've gone through this, awareness of the body is low. I want everybody to be aware of their posture right now. Sit up a little tall. Yes, all of a sudden I saw a little bit of this. Everybody's actually pretty good because I caught you after break. I was spying right before lunch and ooh, it was looking bad. But be aware of your posture. How are your feet placed when you first go to stand up from a table? Okay? How many times does it occur that you stand up and you turn your shoulders and your feet are twisted, or your one foot catches on the other, okay? If you were on The Amazing Race, etc., and your physical challenge was, I want you to stand on a podium for an hour, or stand on a telephone pole that you only have this much for an hour, which would be easier? The podium, a wide base of support, you have better balance. The brain doesn't perceive an awareness of that anymore. You need to tell your feet where to be. Where are my feet right now? Am I on my point? You're on stage now. You're thinking of these things. My feet need to be wide. My shoulders need to be over my hips. It's a lot to ask because it requires a lot of thinking. And we'll talk about cueing strategies. But to know where you should be, where you are, I always say to my people who I work with, I say, check. So with E all the time, he'll walk into the clinic and I put a hand up because I see him coming in because he's rushing to use the bathroom because he has a long drive. And he's coming in and the shoulders are forward and all I do is put a hand up and I say, check. And he pulls his shoulders back, he's aware of his feet, and he restarts. Okay, and you know what? He gets to the bathroom quicker doing that and giving that extra effort and awareness just to his body's posture. But we do get tight. We do lose flexibility, right? It's just natural. It's what happens. Everything we do on a day-to-day, we write and we are flex forward. We read and we're flex forward. We're on the computer and we're flex forward. We have a lot of flexion in our activities of daily living. So to incorporate a simple exercise would be wonderful. It's time permitting because apparently we're getting a winter storm, I don't know, 1 inch. But a snow angel. So think of that movement. If you're lying down in bed, or if you have the ability to stand up and lean against a wall telling you where straight is, bringing your head back, your shoulders back, your arms back, and using that to stretch. I will tell you it feels so good that oftentimes the caregivers are doing it themselves. But to do that and take exercise as medicine, we'll talk to that later, and do it frequently, just like you do taking medication or having your breakfast or your coffee every morning. And I'll tell you, it's a way to correct and feel what straight is. Oftentimes what we'll do is stand against a wall and then walk away from it. And you're imagining that wall behind you. It's as if somebody's putting their hands on you and bringing you into that position, okay? But then I've got a guy like E who just loves feeling strong, right? So that's why he has TheraBand all over the place. So whenever he's getting a lot of checks about his posture, I think almost on every doorknob he has TheraBand. And he goes over to it and he squeezes it and rows back and pinches his shoulder blades and he loves it. He has something set up so that when he's watching TV and the commercial breaks, and it's just a way for him to contract his muscles, which help with an extended posture, and it feels good and it's become habitual and it's positive because it's a reinforcer. Likewise, E went through the LSVT Big program. Has anybody heard of LSVT Big? Awesome, okay. They have done a lot of research with LSVT and people with idiopathic Parkinson's disease. That is where it has been validated in. However, more research, and I sit because I'm going to show you an exercise, more research is being done as we certify more clinicians. I was just in Cherry Hill last week and we certified 90 clinicians. My coworker Heather was in London. You see where the seniority is. She just certified a whole bunch. I'm like, wait a minute. London and Cherry Hill, come on. All right. But the foundation elements are the same as promoting extension, promoting bigness of movement and amplitude of movement, likewise safety. It is repetitive in nature, and we know the brain needs repetition and intensity to create neuronal brain change despite the disease, which is acting on that brain in a negative way. You still can create neuronal brain change with repetitive exercise. We just need more research with a large group of MSA, large group of PSP, and you guys know just from, and Cindy knows, my goodness, just getting everybody together. But if we can have a registry, this opens huge doors for research, huge. So if everybody can sit up tall for me, we'll do the first exercise. Please do not hit your neighbors. I am not liable whatsoever. Okay, so you're nice and tall. Feel where your weight is on your butt bones, okay? You want to be lifted up onto them. Very good. Push your hands out in a big way. And let's do it again. Ready? Push out. Thank you. Now, we can't all reach down, so you're just gonna tap the table, reach up, open big, don't hit anybody, and come back. Let's modify, let's push out, reach up, and bring your hands to your lap. Again, push out, reach up, yes, good, hands bigger, and down to your lap. Everybody's smiling, why is that? I'm a bit of a Looney Tune, I know, but it makes you feel good to move. It does, our bodies like to move. And likewise, it's all movement that, when are you up here doing things? Not that often, unless you're putting things away. So it's good movement and it promotes that. So he went through that program, and I will tell you what that program gave him, because he was already strong. His posture, outside of his leaning forward, was decent. What it gave him was a great mind-body awareness, because I was always asking him, how much effort are you giving me in your movement? 0 to 10. And in the beginning, he'd say 4, and he didn't really understand how to push himself harder, okay? How to move bigger. And we got him to do that.
What is LSVT?
It stands for Lee Silverman Voice Training. So back in the day, there was Lee Silverman, okay, whose family said, we do not understand her. Her voice volume is so low. Her intonation is so poor. There's got to be something about this that we can do. So Dr. Lori Ramig and Dr. Cynthia Fox, both speech-language pathologists, and likewise Dr. Becky Farley, who's a PT, got together and they developed a rote series of vocal exercises and then likewise functional phrases. It was done at a repetition of 4 times a week for 4 weeks, okay? And then what they found was significant improvements in carryover when the person then stopped the exercises. That predates the big program, which is more physical and occupational therapies, and I do have a link which shows the website. It's in your slides in terms of how to find other PTs and OTs about that have familiarity. That started much later, but again, it's a rote series of exercises. Then we have 5 functional tasks that are specific to the person. So for some people who live in Center City, one of their functional tasks might be related to getting out of a cab, because it's so different and so variable. Another person, it might be that he and his wife have a condo in Atlantic City and he really wants to be able to carry his bag and open the door and get through, so that his wife isn't carrying the bags. That means a lot to him if he can carry the bag. So it's different for every person. So despite the repetition and the roteness of it, and protocol, if you will, there is specificity to the person as well. And it's very good. It is. And it's getting out there more and more. Okay, next slide. So in terms of antipulsion outside of posture, there's an awareness of walking, okay? Now that we talk about this walking, watch everybody's walk, okay, around you. It's so interesting what you can see. My husband nags me all the time. He said, why are you staring at that person? I'm like, I'm watching how they're walking. But it's just so very interesting because you will show a lot. And what it is, for example, and I saw a lot of people walk in that the weight was forward, and not everybody can see this, and normally I would stand on a table, but I won't. Weight is forward, okay? And if my weight is forward, the ability to strike down with my heel first is practically darn impossible. If my shoulders are over my hips, that's going to promote me to lift my leg and initiate with my feet. The biggest change is that it's not your upper body which initiates, it comes from your feet. So that's your checkpoint. Stop. Think of your feet, feel your feet, strike down with that heel, and roll through that gait. If you do that, number 1, just lifting your leg up higher, you will have better posture, because with hip flexion, it's going to bring back that extension in the upper trunk. If I am here, I can't lift, okay, my legs up. Now say you can't bring your posture up here though. That's when we start to talk about assistive devices. Can I give you something that promotes and assists your upper trunk to hold you taller so that you can take that bigger step? Okay, so at first I always want to see, can the person do it? How long can they maintain it? And how receptive are they to the cues? And a lot of times it takes some other tricks, because again, you're not going to be aware of it all the time, right? The phone rings at home and you got to get to that phone before they hang up. Or UPS is at the door and I don't want them to leave, so I've got to hurry up. So then I say to somebody, we call it destination estimation. So different areas in the house. If I know I have a lot of difficulty getting up from the couch and rounding the corner to get to the bathroom, then I would say to the patient, you know what, I want you to estimate how many steps it takes you to get from that point to that point, and I want you to count your steps all the time. What that does is it keeps you aware and focused on your steps, and then likewise promotes you to take bigger steps to get there. For the coaches whom are around you, stop and restart, that's the check. Rather than saying you're not lifting your feet up, you're not landing with your heel, you're leaning forward, why are you doing that? Fix that. If you're in it, okay, and walking, trying to lift your shoulders up and your knees up, you can't do it. You're already in a dynamic state of motion. You truly need to stop and restart, okay? So that's the check. If you see this happening, it's just the up, and then you get tall, and then restart in a big way. Okay, does that all make sense? Yeah. Great, great. Okay, advance please. Ha, freezing. Does shivering count as an exercise? Ha. In a way it does, because it's a lot of contraction of muscles. However, has anybody in here experienced the inability to walk, where you feel that you are stuck or trembling in place? Has anybody experienced that? I see it. Yes, good, good. Okay. Yeah, good, yes, but not good, yes. Okay. Akinesia, it's a motor block, okay? And a lot of patients, when they say this, people who go through it, some people who aren't aware of it don't understand, what do you mean you're frozen in space? How can that be? Again, it falls down to your body's weight and where it is through your feet. So if I go to initiate a turn and I turn my shoulders, I have all my weight in that foot which is supposed to move. So now I'm trying to force it. And then the legs start going faster and faster, and now I'm getting worried that I'm going to fall. So now I'm going to reach for something because I feel like I'm falling, and that makes it worse. Again, we'll fall back to the stop and restart. That's the biggest thing to do. If you are stuck, you're not going to, while you're in it, break it. The only way you will is letting gravity break it for you, when you will fall out of it. You must follow these 4 S's. The first is stop. And stop is interesting, because when I've said it to some people, and one woman specifically, she'll go and I'll say stop. She'll say, okay, I've stopped, but I still see in her like, no, it's take a deep breath. Stop and take a deep breath. Okay? Stop contracting your muscles. Stand tall, because by doing so, it takes away that trigger from however your body shifted its weight. And then rather than trying to initiate in this form of movement, shift your weight side to side, because the only way for a foot to take a step is if your body has unloaded it through a weight shift. So stop, stand tall, shift your weight, step big. It's a lot of cueing, and for a lot of people they can't cue that much, and we'll talk about what to do. But in the beginning, if you catch it early enough, it's very successful. Go for it.
It usually happens on my left side.
Mm-hmm.
My left side has always been a weaker side, so I try to shift to first, or start over again to force myself to move the right foot first, so that I can move the left.
Great idea. Yep. So Tom was saying that his left side seems to be his more affected side, and likewise the weaker side. So if he goes to initiate with that side first, that trips him up and triggers. So I have had some people where they are very successful thinking right first in that instance. Some people, and again, you gotta try different things. Some people, if they start with the good side first, the other side is still falling behind. So for other people, it's starting with the weak. You just gotta try different things and find out what works for you the best. And that's a lot of times what the therapist is in there for, to try those different things with you. Okay, next slide. So, areas in the home, there are triggers typically. So for Tom, it might be when he's going to turn. For some people, it's going through doorways. For some people, it's when they're in the bedroom, going around the bedroom. For other people, it's when they're standing in line and they have to then start again. For some people, it happens where no rhyme or reason. It just happens and they're unsure of how to get out of it. So for some of those cues, doorways, rather than looking at the doorway, because sometimes people develop an anticipatory anxiety, they see the doorway, they start to take the tinier steps, and then they can't do anything. Rather than looking at the doorway, find a target through the doorway. I'm going to, and it might be just a different image on the carpet. I'm walking to that, and therefore the brain isn't processing that narrowing space anymore. Likewise, elevators are so tough, and for right reason. Look to the back of the elevator, look at the wall at the back of the elevator, and oftentimes with people I'll say, as you're going through the elevator, count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, it brings your focus to your feet rather than what's going on around you. Same thing through the doorways. Counting can be very good. For some people, it's just the act of having people behind them, which can trigger a freeze. So you say to people, please go ahead and I will go after you. For one fellow, we tried so hard, but it always got him when people would hold the door for him. And because it made him feel rushed, he appreciated, he wasn't angry, but it made him feel rushed. It made everything worse. So what we just did was, and we practiced in a loud voice, so it was a bit of a hybrid of big and loud, was just say in a big voice, I appreciate your effort. No, thank you. I have to wait here for a moment. Don't go into the reason why I'm just going to wait here for a moment and let that person go, and then you do that yourself. It's interesting how much people want to help, and sometimes through their help, it can actually make things worse. For example, if somebody sees you struggling to get up from a chair and the first thing they do is come in front of you, here, let me pull you forward. Ah, no, pulling forward, okay, versus coming to the side of you and helping you up that way. People have good intentions, and sometimes it's just going to take you to say, I appreciate that, no thank you, I'm fine. All right. So it just depends. For some people, they really want to not have to say that and want to walk through that door with that rushing of a person behind them or somebody holding it. So we keep practicing and we try. So it comes down to you and your wants first, and that's what we work towards. And then after that work, it kind of shows the person, all right, we've worked towards this. So on days where I'm really tired, or I know I'm not gonna be able to do it, then that's the day that I say, no thank you, I'm gonna do this myself, and you take out that element of feeling rushed. Okay, so it's not always concrete, do this, do that. Sometimes it's situational. With turns, and next slide, please. Turning is an interesting one, and something that we never really think about. Turning happens all the time. Turning can simply be when you're in the bathroom and you're reaching for your towel to turn, okay? And the trickery that can happen with that, and I'll tell you, bathrooms are scary because we have a lot of hard surfaces and corners. All right, shoulders and feet should always be pointing in the same direction, because once I turn my shoulders in a different direction than my feet, I'm setting myself up to festinate, freeze, or lose my balance. And I've lost that sense or mindfulness of feet first. Shoulders and feet in the same direction. So if I'm turning to reach for something, I turn feet first. Okay, everybody's getting the gist of a common theme here of feet first. A big thing if you are using your rollator, and especially the rollator, because man, it's going great, it's got those rotary wheels, I love it, and here's my turn, and the shoulders go first, and then all of a sudden it's playing catch up and gravity versus elbows to the side, feet first. It's always feet first. The rollator is an extension of you, and you will move with it. If that's hard to do, take 2 hand towels right underneath the armpits, give them a squeeze, and you'll know when you're doing something wrong because you will have dropped the towels. All right, so that's a nice little practice trick. Keeping the elbows to the side, the posture tall, it is feet first. Okay, sometimes you have the space enough to do a U-turn. So if you were coming around and it's right and left, and make sure one foot is going beyond the other. And then likewise, and in therapy we do this often, check both directions, because some people may have no difficulty if they turn to the right, but it's when turning to the left that it becomes problematic. And sometimes if we can't practice through it or discover a technique, then we need to change the way certain setups are in the bathroom or the bedroom to facilitate more of the good turn than the bad turn. But always be aware that the smaller the space, the more you need to bring your mindfulness to your feet, and it should feel like a march, okay? So that it stays with the feet rather than the shoulders. Feet and shoulders always pointing in the same direction. That's your check for that. So if we hit up the next slide, all right, This one is a nice foot demonstration of what should happen with the feet. It should be a lift. They are your pointers. So if I'm doing that military turn, if I want to turn to the right, if I step first with my left, I've now scissored and I'm going to lose my balance, way too narrow. If I turn with my right foot when I'm trying to go right, my base of support stays bigger, and then my body can facilitate more of a weight shift. Does everybody have it? All right, everybody's looking sleepy, so on 3, when I say, does everybody have it, you're gonna say, I've got it!
Got it!
Woo! I didn't say 3. 1, 2, 3. Got it! Good! All right, next slide. Okay, assistive devices. So my guy E, when he started with me after the knee replacement, outside of the dizziness, a lot was with his antipulsion. So I got him a trekking pole. It's not a cane, it's a trekking pole. Okay, canes, we have about a 30-degree bend in our elbow. A trekking pole is 90 degrees. He would use that when he was standing still and put it in front of him, kind of like a golfer's pose. You see men and women on the, I don't know, I don't play golf, but I think they something like that. Got it, thank you. And he would put it in front of him because that was his block and it promoted shoulders over hips. And that was very, very helpful for him. I will say for some people who I've had that have a lot of retropulsion, something we don't always see in MSA, but can happen where, say you lift something up and you start to take steps backwards, or likewise you're standing still and your body's so stiff and rigid and has changed in ways that when you look up, it brings enough weight back that trekking pole is something bearing weight down forward and is helpful. So it worked out well for him for a little bit. It requires a lot of coordination. So I would say I use this more early on. Again, it depends on the person. So say I have a person who really just wants to go back to cooking, or I have one fellow who really got into art. There's a great art workshop at the Philadelphia Museum of Art for people with Parkinson's and Parkinsonisms, and he goes, but he wants to stand. So he has a trekking pole to bear weight to promote upright posture as he's painting. And it works really well for him. So again, case specific. Now what happened with E and Big Bertha was he needed, because of his size and his weight, everything all together, he just needed more support. He needed 4 points to anchor him to promote more upright. However, because he has a tendency to anti-pulse, despite all the checks we do, and because of that fall, I had to make his rollator heavier to try to slow him down. So I took sandbags, the traditional ones you can buy at Dick's or any sporting goods store, and I put them in the front, okay, lining them right here, attaching around, all right? He has 18 pounds added to his 14-pound rollator, and it works for him. Now, why did I do that instead of recommending something called a U-step? Has anybody heard of the U-step? The U-step is a piece of equipment produced by In-Step Mobility. It is a rotary walker. It weighs 26 pounds. A typical rollator weighs anywhere from 12 to 14. It's heavy. It has more rotary wheels. People have a tendency to turn better with it. People who anti-pulse can move better with it. People who have freezing of gait can move better with it because it has a laser that can light up on the ground. Likewise, you can get it with a metronome. We'll talk about cueing and a metronome in a little bit, and that works. But when you look at the frame here to the frame here, it is slightly more narrow. And for my guy E, because of his dizziness and how MSA is showing its face in him, he's gotten himself really wide. And Big Bertha is wide enough for him. The U-step is not wide enough, so that's why I had to load up his rollator, okay? So that in-step mobility, and I would say, if you are looking into a rollator, 8-inch wheels, go over the rocky stuff a lot better than the 6 inches that tend to come with them, all right? So the 8-inch wheels, if I have a person who I know is more that community ambulator, and likes going to the soccer field or what have you for the grandkids or the kids, much, much better. All right, next slide. So we're talking a lot about movement and putting in the sense of being more active and more mindful. Do know the ability to move is not lost. It is just not automatic. All right, that's a big difference. So you must first understand what is the disconnect here. Because I'll tell you, I see it all the time where people say, but I am doing it, I am doing it, I am moving bigger, or I'm doing the best I can. And that's when I'll tell you, I pull out the video and I just tape them, and then I play it back. Or I have the spouses tape them at home and play it back and say, now what were you cueing yourself to do? And that's why we a lot of times hit that nagging moment of the spouses and the caregivers, because in therapy, they see how well the person is moving, and they just want that to carry over. And then it just becomes tons of cues all the time. Do this, do that. For the person, we need them to realize, look at what's better. Now, what made it better? It's a big education piece. Okay, what's different about your body in that video? And how did we get that? And do you want to walk like that, or do you want to walk like that? And you know what? Sometimes it's a compromise where people will say to me, by the end of the day, I want a coach-free zone and a coach-free time, and that's okay too. But it's got to be the compromise of, yes, I'm going to accept the fact that I need to control my movement more, and that's hard to do, and that's accepting responsibility. Don't put it on MSA. Say, I'm going to control this a little bit more, and here's how I can do it. And that's what the therapist is going to get you there, and that's what the help of your family and friends is going to bring you as well. So we can teach people good quality movement, but you've got to educate as to why the movement isn't quality, and how outside the disease you can cue yourself to move better, okay? Because it's easier to just say, well, I have MSA, and this is just how I move. No, you have MSA, you have the ability to move better, it's just going to require more of a fight from you. So do you want to fight, or do you not want to fight? And that's what you got to get to. Okay. So who wants to fight?
Everybody.
Alright! Okay, I know, sleepy eyes, it's so warm. Okay, alright, so here we go, next slide. So cues. They're all intentional, okay? We're bringing the brain to what are the feet doing, what is the body doing. You can cue internally or externally. So an internal cue would be you in your head counting 1, 2, 3, 4. An internal cue would be you looking through that elevator at a target and saying, I want to go to that target. You've addressed it, it's inside your head. It wasn't a spoken word, you didn't have to do that. But for some people, we start out this way, and then the brain just isn't quick enough to do it. So then we have to use something that we call external cues. Now what are they? Can we hit the next slide? So an external cue, taping lines on the floor, I have some pictures of that. It's a dark image, but this shows the laser. Okay, it's a red laser. Outside of the U-step, there's a company called MOBI laser, M-O-B-I laser. And that's a laser that you can attach to a rollator, which you already have. You can attach to a cane. Now, the one negative, you take that red light outside, UV light negates it. So now you can't see the red light. So it's indoors only. The company, and we have been working with them and asking for this for so long. They say they're working on a green laser. It hasn't come out yet, and this has been 3 years of asking. So hopefully, pretty soon. So right now, indoors.
Could you just say the company name again?
MOBI laser, M-O-B-I-L-A-S-E-R. And that's outside of U-step, so different company. So lasers do work. Metronomes, okay? Tick, tick. I use that a lot with people in the beginning to work on endurance, okay? And to just show people how much slower they get or how poor their endurance is, and you need to pick it up. Now, it's very easy and very stimulating for the brain. Think of what happens when your favorite song comes on the radio and you move to it, right? What's happened in the brain to make you want to move? You have an attachment to it. The brain is trying to mimic the movement to the sound. So a metronome can work very well for certain people, okay? And the brain attends to it, locks in on it, and we can really drive home the foot movement. Now, say I have somebody who's non-ambulatory and I just want them to use their legs more. I can do this metronome in sitting, where they're marching in place or kicking out and kicking in or lean. lean and back to promote more upright posture to facilitate a sit to stand. So all levels metronome can be used, even for bend mobility, bending the knees and straightening the legs, preparing to roll in the bed with knees bent to push. So we can use metronome there as well, and it just gets people to lock in a little bit more. Likewise, throughout therapy, all the therapists in our center, just in our cueing, we're very rhythmical in the cueing to get the person to move to that. Tactile sometimes works for certain people. And we've all gotten it when you're slumping and you say, sit up a little taller, right? And the person, okay, so you get that a little bit. At the end of the day, when we're all documenting, my coworker comes around and does a little bit of that. Just, oh, yep, you're right. They have made bracelets which tap. There is a study currently going on with people with idiopathic Parkinson's just for arm swing, because we know that the arm swing tends to decrease, and that tap and buzz on the wrist to see if that works to get people to swing their arms. And that's currently a study that's going on. But it falls down onto what we call rhythmic auditory stimulus. And that is that the brain can use an external cue to help diminish the role of that lack of dopamine in the brain, which is what gives us our internal rhythm. So rhythmic auditory stimulus can be something to try. Next slide. So the tape lines on the floor outside of the laser. Say I have a person like E who was consistently not bringing his feet to the chair, and he was just doing one of those again and again, again and again. And then in therapy, he started doing it great, walking to the chair and sitting, but at home, especially at night, it all went to pot. He just went back. So getting painter's tape, that blue tape, won't harm carpet, won't harm floor, or getting, and they make duct tape in every color, that will be a little bit more difficult to get up. However, it needs to be a bright color, but X marks the spot. Becomes very easy then. Bring your feet to the X. Okay, sit down. And then that takes out the cueing of somebody on you saying you're not close enough, you're not close enough, look at your feet, stop and check. But now the person is doing it themselves. Or say I have a person who lives alone and the aide isn't there with them during that time. I use that. Likewise, I have people who never position themselves too high up on the bed or too down low on the bed. Okay, this is another instance where you can do X marks the spot. Boy, she's now not in her head a lot. You're in for it. Oh, no.
Everything.
Oh, boy. Okay. X marks the spot. Getting through doorways, putting tape lines through doorways. And you know what? It's not always permanent. So it's just for the practice. All right? The more you practice, the more repetition you do, the more confidence you have, the more likely you are to cue yourself. So say for the first couple weeks you need it, and then we take it up again. And then you're doing great at home, and then you start to freeze again or have difficulty in doorways, well, guess what? Then the tape goes down again, and then you practice again with it. All right, next slide. So remember back to the symptoms that I talked about for E, dizziness was a biggie for him. Now, truly, some of these tips and tricks I stole from our OT. She handles more of these activities of daily living. For him, his dizziness excessively was when he was getting up and down from bed in the morning, likewise up and down from his chairs in the house. So for her, what she did was avoid low chairs. He's a tall guy, so they just build up chairs with fine cushions for different things, just so the brain and the body did not have to react, because you've minimized how much the distance traveled and the effect of gravity was. Likewise, our OT added in a ledge pillow, doing the part training, and the biggest thing, pausing, that 10-second rule when getting out of a car, 10-second rule after you roll and sit up before you stand up. 10 seconds is a while too. It doesn't seem like long, but when you count it down, it seems like a long time. Very helpful. It just gives your body more time to react. For E, when he would start to feel dizzy, and especially when he was doing his exercises, what he did, because he had good balance to do it, he would cross his legs and squeeze them. That spikes the blood pressure. I actually learned that from the MSA Consortium in 2012, and I used that tip. One of the doctors talked about that, and I used it on E. So just crossing the legs and squeezing, and that response in the body can pump up the blood pressure, and that helped him for a little bit. Next slide. Yeah.
I was looking at getting out of bed,
Yes.
so
Let's go back. So the log roll. Let me go to the getting out of bed. So people tend to. The demo. People tend to. So twofold. Who gets into bed on hands and knees? Does anybody do that? Oh, really? Okay.
You're in trouble then.
The hands and knees, now the brain's got to coordinate the arms and the legs. And then it becomes this, like you're a little critter. And then all of a sudden, a tipping cow. And then all of a sudden you're in a diagonal and there's no room for anybody else.
Absolutely.
See? Try to sit first, okay? Now even in sitting, some people then do the scoop to lay down. I won't make you. The scoop to lay down, which you're engaging abs, neck flexors. All of a sudden it becomes this very tight and you can't get the body to relax, not good. Log roll is what we say, and sometimes we practice part by part. And the first part is bringing the shoulder down, and then you pause. And then we just keep practicing that. So shoulder down. Once the shoulder is down, big kick, big kick. I'm gonna fall off this table. Big kick to bring the legs up. Okay? Then pause, check your position. Then roll onto your back. A lot of times what happens, even if people do this method, they get in, or if their family is helping them, and they get their legs to the edge, but then when they go and roll, then they're in that diagonal again, and the feet are hanging off. So remember the feet, okay? Bring the feet further back in. Likewise, I can't tell you how many times in the middle of the night people say, I can't roll over. And it's because you're trying to roll over with your legs straight. So what's happening? You're just using your upper trunk. So think of your feet. Bend your knees, both legs, push through your feet. Makes the biggest difference in the world, because now you're just not relying on your upper body. Yeah.
A tip that I hope will help people. My husband had a problem moving in bed.
Yeah.
So eventually I had specially made satin sheets. But then you're too slippery.
Mhm.
So I got shelf liner like used in the kitchen, and I put them under his feet. So he has the traction to push himself into the right position.
That's
and
great.
then when he's in position, take a piece of that and put it under his legs so he doesn't slide back out of position off the sheets.
Perfect.
And if we go away, he gets satin shorts, so he
Good
can
job,
slide on
bottoms.
regular sheets there. So I don't bring the satin sheets with him. But
Perfect.
That's what you got to figure out.
Yeah, satin sheets, we recommend a lot the fitted sheet to be satin, because then
Yeah.
the top sheet will slip right off.
Right.
But just like you said, it's, choosing two evils, except you devised a way out of it,
Yeah.
where you have the satin sheets and it's great, and now you can slide a little bit better, but you don't have the traction anymore. So that's when you can use that shelf liner. We use Dyson in therapy, but shelf liner is perfect. And
Similarly, getting into a car, my mom used to have trouble sitting in the passenger seat and turning, so they would put a plastic
plastic
garbage
grocery
bag.
bag. Yeah.
It would just swivel.
Yeah, rather than, no money versus the $55, whatever they cost for the swivel. Yeah, plastic bag works great too. Excellent, great tip, thank you.
how about getting out of bed?
Getting out of bed is just the reverse. So, the big thing with getting out is people want to do the scoop to sit. They grab on here, they pull themselves up, and then the legs. And again, it's all this contraction in the flexors. Bend both knees, roll onto your side, kick your feet off, then push up. Okay, so breaking it down into those parts. Good, thank you for that question. Okay, next slide. Actually, go ahead. Go ahead. One more. Funny one. I know. Sorry. Okay, I put these out of order. So something else. We're talking about great stuff here and a lot of movement. But do realize some people don't have a lot of movement right now, or some people do require more of the tactile cueing or assist. Because I'll tell you, I have patients who try to shift their weight side to side, but I need to be with them under their arm to shift them side to side for them to take that big step. Now, something more and more, if you have an aid at home, or even for you, if you find that you're grabbing at the pants or at the belt, okay? Sure, it feels strong to you, but it can feel a little uncomfortable for the person whose pants you're grabbing, right? They make a really neat gait belt now, okay, that has rings. So if you look up gait belt with hand rings, okay, you get an array of them. And they're really, it's a new guarding technique that we use. I love it because now I can use this side, I can use this side, I have all these points of contact. It's not what used to be a gait belt, which looked like a seat belt, which really hurt people too, because it was just really, really tight and thin, and now we're dispersing all of that pressure across there. So that gait belt with the hand hooks is really great if you need to be more hands-on.
Where do you get?
Amazon.
Okay.
I'll tell you the best prices I find. Not specifically on Amazon. I go through Amazon, I Google it. That's what I tell everybody to do. And the prices do change. Versus if you go to a DME company, it's going to be through the roof.
And just a shameless plug, if you use Smile Amazon and select MSA New Jersey, it'll help us.
Oh, that's great.
What did you say? Say it again.
Smile Amazon,
Yeah?
you know, they donate to charities, yeah, and MSA New Jersey is registered, so it helps.
Well, I didn't know that.
A little bit.
I gotta change some forms. That's great.
Sorry.
That's wonderful.
I couldn't resist.
You have to. You have to. That's wonderful. That's great. Smile Amazon. Yeah. Gate belt with handles. Gate belt with
Now you
handles.
just Google gate belt with
Gate belt
handles
with handles.
and it'll come up.
It'll come up.
Okay,
Gate belt with
gate
handles.
Gate belt with handles.
You can. I've done that. I use that as exercise, actually. Resisted exercise to get people in it. Yeah, I punching people the walls.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
If someone has fallen, is
Yes.
that where you would grab them to pick them back up, or would you not use it to pick them up?
You could. So usually when people fall, okay, the first thing I try to do is get them onto all fours, okay, because that's the easiest for the person who's helping them. So if they're down, you get them onto the side, onto all fours. The hardest thing often for people to get onto all fours is if they're here. They don't have the strength to get the butt up, so having that handle is huge. Otherwise, you've got to get the hands to the hips because that's where the weight is, and anchor through the hips. Sometimes with family who isn't strong enough, I have them use their body where they put a knee down and they push with their body to basically use their hip to push them up rather than the pull. But yes.
Belt to get them on all four and then help that they get up on their own.
Yeah,
At least
belt onto all four, get to a chair or a chair in front, hands come to the chair. You use the belt to push them to the side to get a leg up, the belt to assist to push here, and then either you sit down real quick or you help them to standing. Great question.
Does the gait belt is used in physical therapy? Should they have a gait belt, or should you bring a gait belt too?
They should have a gait belt. They might not have as nice a one as this. They might have the old school one because they have to, and it's JACO standards, we have to be able to sanitize it, so they make the old school gait belts that you can clip quite down. So most therapy sites, even ours, I have one to show people what it looks like, but I have to use this whole funky spray and it's hard to sanitize in between, so we don't tend to use those on everybody. It goes back to the traditional one. So if you have one, bring it. Because hey, I want to practice, this is my own, I want to see what it feels like, and I want to make sure my spouse or somebody else is doing the same as you are, or we're aligning here.
Yeah, they're not using any at all. All they're doing is they're holding my pants.
Well,
I just hate that. You
Well,
know?
then request a gait belt.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd rather you use a gait belt, and I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to think about the person. And of course, they're thinking about your safety, but
Yeah, I know.
maybe not your
I
comfort.
just think they do that. They use my the back of my pants to hold me up, you know.
Yeah, request
Okay.
a gait belt.
I've seen where the caregivers were in it too.
So it looks similar to that. That looks like a lumbar support. So that's the play
Yeah, but
off of this, yeah.
The one I saw was, they have a circular on the spinner on the floor,
Yeah?
lift the patient up,
Oh, and the patient
and
holds
then the
that.
patient holds them, and they
Yeah.
turn, and the spin just turns.
Yeah.
You turn the patient.
Yep. So that's, if a person requires so much assist that their hands need to be on their caregiver, absolutely can the caregiver wear it for them to lock onto. Much easier than grabbing onto the caregiver's clothing.
Yeah.
Could you just quickly say again how you use your body to help? I didn't quite get that.
Do you mind getting on the ground?
Could you just
Okay.
What are you on this trip?
I know. Carefully,
What
though.
position would you like?
On your side. Yep, all the way here. Okay. Okay. All right. So, can you press up onto your hands? I've fallen and I can't get up. Oh, Lord. Hands are down. Now, can you push up onto your arms at all? So I'm supporting here. Now, a lot of times what I'll tell people to do, so my leg here is under her, and I'm going to lift her hips. I'm being handsy. Nope, you're giving me too much. Yep, you're down.
Giving me too much of that.
And I'm here. So now I'm going to use my leg, and you couldn't really see it that much. Come back down for me. No. To get the butt up.
Are you moving your leg?
Yeah, so fine.
You're like pushing against her.
I'm pushing.
She is, I can confirm, she is pushing against me with her leg.
So use it as a lever. Likewise, I have come to a person, and even if I get them halfway up and I'm starting to get tired, just lean them against you and say, let's just take a moment here. You can do that too, or even here, if you need a second. Lean against my body, I need a minute. Let's take a couple breaths together.
I've done that once.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy to assist.
Yes.
Can you talk about stand aids? Do you use them or recommend
Standing
them?
aids,
Can you
yeah.
talk to them a little bit about that?
So there are a couple standing aids that work, and there's, most people think of the traditional Hoyer, and that's a very dependent, and there's not weight bearing through a Hoyer lift. That's just getting a person from point A to point B. A stander can be used now in the homes and is small enough that it can go into rooms and through doorways, etc. And basically what that is if a person's sitting in a chair or at the edge of the bed, it comes up, okay? There are some with people that I actually have them sit on that tarp that hooks here, and through hydraulics, the person's here and it brings them up by putting pressure through the legs, through the knees, and then likewise a force from the hips. So pushing the knees this way and the hips this way, okay? I've had some people that we just work together and they do it just from that point of control. I'm not a huge fan because then it's a lot of flexion, okay? Which again, I want to promote pushing up rather than pulling up. But for some people, just working on standing tolerance, it's a great way because it's putting force here, and they're up here. Okay, and you can do so. And if you have an aide or caregiver at home, you can then stand and play games, which is really good. Stand and watch some TV. Again, just working on that standing tolerance. So yeah.
I'm also, well, the way we use it is for transfers more. Like they get them up, and if they can't walk well and it's hard to move them, then they can wheel it into the bathroom, and then they can.
Yeah. So from an acute care standpoint, absolutely. So in a rehab facility, it can be used a lot. From an outpatient facility and in the home, used more for activities of that nature.
Okay.
But absolutely.
I have handouts on it, by the way.
Yes, they are right out front on the speech table.
Stand aid.
Standing. All right. So now let's go back 2 slides. Thank you. Okay. So similar to the LSDT big and loud discussion, which I had, a lot of the research and the patients whom are used for the research are people with idiopathic Parkinson's disease. However, okay, more and more are groups such as Dance for PD, which started in New York, but now we have 5 locations in Philadelphia. People with all diagnoses that fall under the umbrella of Parkinsonisms, okay, idiopathic to atypical Parkinson's, come for this because, again, we're looking at amplifying movement, the bigness of movement, posture, extension, okay? And it's very, very good. Now, Dance for PD uses a lot of that rhythmic auditory stimulus, okay? You're moving to the music. You're coordinating your body's movements to the rhythm which is presented in front of you. Likewise, people love it just because they like the music and enjoy that and they have a good connection. There's also been a lot of research with tango. Interesting. So that form of dance, tall posture, big arms, big step, right? So you can understand why, okay, I can see how something that's very large amplitude movement, that might help impact some of the motor symptoms that we see, which is related to smaller movement. And then if we hit the next slide, this is from a research study in the UK, the Rehab. It cracks me up just because of the intensity, but using the we, hand-eye, motor control, having personal best interaction, if you can go back a slide again for me. Interaction with, if you have a grandchild who has the Wii or a child who has the Wii, it's great. It's gaming. They've done a lot with gaming and the brain in just an aging brain, not necessarily a brain with MSA or a brain with Parkinson's disease. Okay? Pedaling has been shown to be very good. They have motorized floor bikes now, so if a person is unable to pedal themselves, Walmart was throwing out one for under $75, so a motorized floor bike where you can sit in it, you can actively pedal it, or you can put it on the mode where it's pedaling. So think of what this does for circulation, and likewise it's reciprocal, it's one like the other, and one like the other at a set speed, and that's great repetition and stimulation to the brain and the body. So that works
To
too.
the bike, what you just
You can sit in any chair, and then it's on the floor. So that's really good.
And do your
And
arms
you can
too.
do your arms for the ergometer aspect of it as well. And I love when the arms, because you can put it in reverse, and then you're stimulating all the muscles back here in reverse, which is great. So it's a motorized floor bike. You can also find them by searching ergometer, ERGOMETER. I know. Right.
Put that in the computer.
Yeah, just Google it. Put a couple letters in and it'll populate. Okay. Music, likewise. If I have a person who is just very, very sedentary and I am starting basic and saying, I just need you to do 2 minutes of activity. It's a power song before dinner. Okay, that tends to be a time of the day where you really wear down. Put on a favorite song and just, if it's in your chair, if it's standing up on a counter and you just move to the song, you might sing and use your voice, but you do it, and you do it every day. For some people, it's a nice refresher, a nice break, okay? You can even do it behind a closed door and just dance, all right? It does make you feel good. All right, next slide. Oops, sorry, 2 more. Okay, and the next one. All right, so we've learned a lot of tips and tricks, and we're gonna hopefully be putting a lot into play. Of course, I had to make a Philadelphia reference, okay? However, there's a lot of people here who are your Mickeys, okay? They're your coaches, they're your cornermen, all right? That's what they're there to do. So it's not about nagging, it's about coaching. We're all on the same team. Realize you can always do reminder signs, post-it notes, a sign that says, I have stop signs all the time, or check signs that people actually put up in the house. Try to utilize those external cues and try to get that balance of how much coaching am I giving, what is the frequency of my coaching, am I loading the brain too much, so that you both and all of you can work together in a better way. Okay? Next slide. But do realize that working together means finding a therapist, and finding a therapist who has an understanding of what MSA is, and that is hard, but we are really trying hard. From London to Cherry Hill, we are trying to educate therapists. Or likewise at Penn, we have a visiting nurse faculty program, and it's nurse educators, and we're trying to educate nurses to understand more about PD and atypical Parkinsonism, and they come and spend time in therapy. It's really wonderful. But if you go to the NPF, there are centers of excellence, which are listed there. If you go to lsvtglobal.com, you can find a clinician. Now, they may not be a center of excellence. They may not only treat Parkinson's or MSA. However, they have had some exposure, and some exposure is better than no exposure. There's also Parkinson's Wellness and Recovery, another certification course that's growing. We've hosted it 3 times at Penn now, again, just certifying clinicians. That too has a list of how to find a therapist closer to you. Okay, and everybody has handouts on their slides. Now, finally, if we hit up the next slide, whoops, never mind. Next slide, next slide, and then I'll go back, sorry. So, my email's on the bottom. And after the MSA Coalition, and honestly, Cindy, still to date, I still get people emailing me. Email me. I'd be happy to help, okay? Happy to help you guys. So just use me and I will do as much as I can. That's my pup stretching. Been a long way. He's 120 pounds. He keeps me on my toes. Let's go back two slides. So Cindy had asked me to talk a little bit about the autoambulator and the Alter J. just about some questions that had arisen about it. So the research with so what are these devices? They are treadmills. The autoambulator, actually, think of it like a robot. It is moving your legs while you are standing up. All right. The research has been done in spinal cord injury and people with cerebrovascular accidents, strokes. All right. There is no research with Parkinson's or MSA. We do not have one at our facility. But I will talk about what we do use. The Alter G is a little different in that, think of a champagne bottle, and your body is the cork, and it applies pressure so it unweights you, all right, in a way that feels good because it's just a ring around you. He uses that.
My favorite toy.
Is your favorite? Why do you like
His
it?
favorite toy.
Because you can
Because I can run.
and not feel like you're gonna fall.
Or you just can't run at all. You can't run now.
And you can just run.
Years.
Yeah. So that gives.
I could 2 months ago. I don't know what's so good.
Trying to go back, yeah.
Yeah, so that gives an ability to exercise without the risk of falling. Again, has it been shown, the research behind it is with people with Achilles tendon injuries, anterior cruciate ligament, aerobic capacity though. So could it be something that, hey, once we have this registry, why not? All right, because now we actually have people we can try this with. And it would be very interesting. At my site, what we have is body weight supported treadmill training. It doesn't feel as great as this because you don't feel as secure, but that's with the harness. So I can sling people up and it'll tell me how much body weight is through. And I will absolutely tell you that I've used that with virtual reality goggles for people who lose their balance through doorways and they're loaded with a bunch of doorways and obstacles to step through because our space is very limited. I likewise use it for my people who have such a high fear of falling that they just don't even want to try to walk, and just that compression and sensation makes them feel secure. But sometimes I also hit a wall because it is confined and narrow and it makes people freeze and they can't take steps because they feel too confined and boxed in. So then we take it on the move because it can go off the treadmill and I have people do funky things on it and walk backwards and walk sideways and toss a ball, and I can be away from the person and really get them to engage and do more because you have the support. So that's to answer some questions on that. Any more questions from you guys? Yeah, go for
I have a question as it relates to not using the physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
At what point, usually, and I know everybody's different, and you say, well, I don't have to do this at home. They where I go, is after a written session that they do an evaluation and progress report. And so I got a 1 this last time.
What's that mean? Is that good?
Yeah, good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
progressing as opposed to degressing.
That's great. That's
And
good.
so they've given me a lot of tips, and I feel pretty good after coming out of there. But at what point, Medicaid is going to stop paying for these things. And so you want to have some idea as to when for you to stop before they tell you to stop.
Yeah, so it depends on, it depends on your insurance, private care versus Medicare. But one of our therapists went, Parkinson's Action Network was just on Capitol Hill a few weeks ago, because right now, although there is a Medicare cap, it's not for neuroprogressive illnesses. So just so long as I can dictate medical necessity, I have no cap. And that's why people like E, I once was seeing at a frequency of 3 times a week, then it was 2 times a week, then it was once a week, then it was once every other week. Now I'm checking in once a month, but then I went back to once a week, but now I'm back to once a month. Even with people, so say I have somebody with idiopathic Parkinson's, did the big program, did great, awesome, you met all your goals, I'm so proud of you. I don't just close the door and say sayonara. That's, you're coming back to me, and every person who I work with comes back to me at either 3 months or 6 months. And I evaluate them again. Okay, until there's a cure for this, there should never be an end to therapy. I just say to people, this is the end of this chapter. And I work in a center of excellence and a specialty center, and I can fall back on that a lot in terms of our certifications, which we have. I do know some people, and again, it's an education thing too, and a state thing as well. And that's again why, a big part of the LSVT big training is talking about reimbursement. We need to educate therapists more because sometimes they're just aware of the cap, or that's what they're being told by their employer, or they're a home care agency but billing as an outpatient agency for Medicare A versus B, and it's a lot. But ultimately it comes down to medical necessity, but I think we're going to speak off
Well,
that.
my mother did the big program, both speech and here in Ocean County.
Great.
They
Yeah.
were fantastic.
Awesome.
She did her month 4 times a week. She had her personal goal,
Yeah.
which was
She said she wanted to walk.
she wanted to walk and be able to go up 5 bleachers to watch her grandson play baseball.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, 5 days after she came out, she went in with pneumonia and lost the entire month.
Yeah, so completely
So-
Knocked her right back.
And
Yeah,
knocked her right back
decongestion.
down. But you have to keep going. She's in therapy right now. Now she did big a year ago, and of course it knocked her right back down. But she's in therapy right now, just because she needs to be stronger than when she went. She's back in the hospital. They weren't going to take her into therapy. They said she wasn't strong enough. So the therapist who evaluated her,
Yeah.
the week when she first came in,
Yeah.
came back and said, she's just slightly better. So yes, she's a little stronger. It was that therapist that allowed us by saying, yes, I can give her I can give her something.
Yeah.
That then they took her back into the program, and then the insurance keeps.
But the big program,
You have the opportunity.
If you ask, I don't know if anybody else did, but if you were interested, I'd look into it because it's very intense. You have to go 4 times a week. You have to go for 4 weeks. If you miss 1 or 2 days, you've lost that whole week, and they'll start you all over again,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, you need that frequency, and it
Yeah,
comes
the
down to the
goal
brain.
was, her goal was, she wanted to walk. I took her in a wheelchair. I mean, she could get out of the wheelchair, shuffle along, but she wanted to walk on her own. After 4 weeks, she walked from the building to our car with me walking alongside of her,
Yeah.
just in case.
With those therapists cheering behind her.
And they were there, and they gave
fantastic.
her a little certificate, a graduation certificate. They made it up, and
Yeah.
she was so happy. She was
So proud of her.
She was going to go see her grandson.
Yeah.
3 days later, she was going to go see her grandson. Well, 3 days later, she came down, 3 or 4 days later, she came down with pneumonia again, and was in the hospital for 7 or 8 days.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah,
like she
every
just
day
never
is
even
1
did
week.
anything.
They say in a
But you
hospital.
have to keep it up, too, even after.
LSVT big.
There.
Yeah, and the website is on one of the slides, so it's right in there, and you can find a clinician closer to you.
Same way with her
Yeah.
speech. She'll sit there and she's like,
That's it.
yelling and.
I can yell
I
and cheer
would
for
sit
her.
in on the PT part, but I wouldn't sit in on the
The loud.
You
can handle it.
Screaming.
I think we had, Ray, you had something, and Suzanne?
Yeah.
Okay, my husband is MS patient. I used to take him to Kessler.
Okay.
In like 12 weeks, the first cap was all done.
Yeah.
$1,900 that Medicare had. And therapist said this is maintenance and Medicare is not going to approve another cap. So what do you do in this case?
Email me, and I have a document explaining Medicare and that cap, and you can go back. It's the role of me as a therapist to try to get more education out.
Because they said no,
Yeah.
Medicare is not going to approve and it's all maintenance.
No.
And again,
And now they do approve for maintenance, so therapists can't even
they
fall
do?
back.
They
Yes.
do approve for maintenance?
Yes. And back from when I first started practicing, no, it wasn't. And patients often, and it happens because you develop a bond with the person you're working with, and they just don't think they can do it without you. But really, they could do it with a trainer, and what's the skill need here? But no, actually, maintenance is approved for neuroprogressive
When? As of
illnesses.
when? Because they told us no.
Email me, and I'll send you the
This
information.
has been 3 years, right?
Yeah, I want to say 3 years, because in 3 years they had to go back, and they just went back now, so maybe it was 2013.
I mean, a couple of comments that I have
Yeah,
questions.
last year they told me no. Last year they told me no.
Email, we just gotta educate the people.
I wanted to say that this lady knows what she's talking about. We saw you 3 years ago at the other conference, and how many times I said to my husband, remember what she said, you have to stand up before you turn, and how many times he would almost fall. And all the things the therapists teach you, you really have to do, and to not nag, like you said, like I would text my husband PA all the time, but posture adjust, so that he would just like, and I forget sometimes now, but because I'm at work and he's home by himself.
Yeah.
And I see him doing this right time, this 4 or 5 PA, so it's not even like I'm bugging him.
Yeah, it's a power
And that was from
that's
the two
what we're
he's
talking
reminding me. And the little thing that he said, suddenly the couch is too low or the chair isn't right. You know, you feel like you're overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. You have to buy a whole new couch. You just wanted it right. I took 2-inch blocks and I had my friend drill them on the bottom. So my couch looks ridiculous. It's up on blocks. But it
didn't have to buy a new couch.
And then eventually you put a comforter under his seat. So I mean, you find a way to keep going. But you mentioned something about like, you know, doing these motions. A lot of times I know Tom tries to, he wants to work with the 2-pound weights. Is it better to just do more of this than less of it with the weight?
It's better to achieve full range, Tom.
Okay.
All right. Than it is to get. It's not about strength. It's about
Yeah, I
power.
really thought
You're
it too.
strong.
Yeah.
I bet you if I did spot testing, you're
Right.
strong. Within normal limits even. It's about getting the amplitude and your brain to initiate the movement. Okay, that's what was locked in with your mom. She needed that intensity and repetition to get her to go. And it's an unfortunate thing, and again, this falls in the education, and especially if, and I have a 99-year-old with Parkinson's who was diagnosed when he was 97, and he just couldn't get anybody to work him with intensity because they kept saying, but you're 97. Well, guess what? Yes, so what?
Yeah.
Who cares? There's more and more coming out right now that you need to push. If your cardiologist and pulmonologist has approved you for exercise, you can be pushed. When we age, it doesn't mean we get a get out of jail free card to just be lazy.
So what
No
he
way.
says with the Wii, so we have the Wii bike thing, so you know
Nice.
like this,
Mhm.
but we have that floor exercise. So he tries to do the pedal, even though it's jerky. So he's doing this for the machine, but his legs are, so he can feel like he's pedaling a little bit. So we try different
That's
things.
awesome.
Yeah.
So the Wii has the arm bike, but you have your feet in the leg bike, just so even more so it's simulating biking. It's fantastic. That's very good. Oops, go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, we just gotta start wrapping up
Oh, yeah,
soon.
shoot.
So Lloyd and Ray, and I think we're gonna have to, all right, Freddie,
And then
slipped
you
it
can
under the
email.
wire.
And then you can email.
Okay, right, and then you
Go.
can email.
Okay, so, is there a difference between physical therapy, just regular, and then we have one that deals directly with MSA?
So it all comes down to the certifications that the therapist has and the education which they've received. So if you get a therapist, so there isn't an MSA PT that
Okay.
exists, okay? But if you get a PT who's LSVT Big certified or is Power certified or who works in a center of excellence, you're getting somebody good. If you get a PT who just says, I want to learn more about you, Lloyd, and I want to understand this, do you know anybody who I can contact? You give them my name. I can't tell you how many, we have packets of information that always go out to therapists to try to educate them.
Really?
Yeah,
You have
but try
anybody
that
in New
first
Jersey?
round first. What's that?
Anybody in New Jersey, northern New Jersey? Good one like you?
Email me. I do have a list.
And
Okay.
LSVT has yours.
Has the
You're
global.
listed on there. They
Yeah.
list therapists by certification. They're listed. You could find a therapist. Maybe LSVT, the big program. If you go on the website for LSVT, and that's what it is for. Lee Silverman Voice Therapy, but she
So private insurance, so Freddie was asking private insurance and the number of visitation, so every insurance is different. So I have certain insurances that it's 30 visits per year. I have certain insurance that it's 60, 90, what have you. That's different than Medicare, so I am being capitated. So what we did at our program, we have an out-of-pocket cost, but we've also written for grants to subsidize that. So that's what we've done.
But my question is,
Yeah.
I heard there was a movement to lobby Congress to remove those caps from private insurance. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know the details, but I know my coworker just went to Pan 2 weeks ago and was on Capitol Hill, so she'll have the details. So email me, Freddie, and I can find out as much as she knows because she was just there.
And I think Ray was the last
Oh,
one.
right, sorry, yeah.
My wife found very effective a physical therapist that also, her place had a connection with a pool.
Nice.
She did things underwater. Do you have anything where it doesn't have to be a pool, something where the patient is submerged in water at all?
We don't at our facility. We don't, no, yeah, we don't have it. We have, one of our facilities does have a pool. I will say to people, I have gone through programs people can do in a pool, walking bigger, wearing the gate belt. So I have gone through programs for them to do, but I haven't put it in practice myself. Great. Well, thanks guys. I totally went over time.